Hi everyone. We'll just give it a minute or so in case anyone else would like to join the live stream. Right, I think we'll make a start. Hi everyone, I'm Danielle, and today we're going to open a plug and learn to wire it and change a fuse. If you've got any questions along the way, you can pop them in the chat and I'll try to answer them. But before you start, make sure that your plug isn't connected to anything with a battery, such as a laptop. And if it's got a lead, disconnect it just to make sure that you're safe. You also want a clear area and make sure that there's no water about. So to open your plug, you'll need a screwdriver. The type of screwdriver that you'll need will depend on the screw that's used to connect the front and the back together. Mine's needs a flat blade screwdriver, which I've got here. So I'm just going to undo the screw and the front and the back should come apart. So it will look something like this. Once you're inside, you should see that there's 3 wires and you've got a fuse. Each wire connects to one of your 3 pins. So in this country, we have 3 pins for our mains plugs. You might have seen abroad that there's 2. Our electricity is supplied at 230 volts AC, or alternating current. That means that the voltage constantly oscillates between positive and negative, like a sine wave, at 50 hertz, which means that it does one cycle 50 times in 1 second. The voltage is supplied to the live wire, which is the brown one here, and the neutral wire is the 0 volts that is measured from. So ours is 230 volts. That means that on average, the live wire is 230 volts above the neutral wire, which is 0 volts. We then have the earth wire as well. This is in case the circuit breaks. So if the circuit breaks, it might short and the appliance could become charged, or especially if it's connected to a metal casing, the metal casing can become live. If we were to touch it, the current would instead want to go through us instead of going through the open circuit. So instead of going through us, the current will instead go through the earth pin and straight into ground. This protects us from getting an electric shock. You should then also have your fuse. You can take the fuse out and have a look at it. It should just unclip from your pin. Some fuses can look like this one and be covered, or you'll have some that are in a glass cylinder with a wire inside. So the wire is designed to break if the current gets too high. If the resistance in the circuit decreases, the current will increase. And if it goes above a certain value, the wire will break. This protects the circuit from damage and protects us from any electric shock too. There's lots of different types of fuses, and it's important that you always replace the fuse with the same type. Some are called fast flow fuses. These are designed to break as soon as the current goes above the current rating of the fuse. As soon as the current is too high, the fuse will break and open the circuit so that it stops working and keeps us safe. This can normally take about 1/10 of a second, whilst others are called slow blow fuses, and they'll take slightly longer to blow. This is useful for circuits that might contain coils or transformers, where the current might spike when it first turns on and then go a bit lower and lower down below the rating of your fuse. This means that the fuse won't blow when you first turn it on, but if the current is too high for a longer period of time, your fuse will then blow and break the circuit. So it's always important to replace the fuse with the same type. You can tell the type by looking on the collar of your fuse. There should be some letters and numbers that will tell you the type that it is. Mine has got an F to tell me that it's a fast blow fuse and that it is rated for 10 amps at 250 volts. Most fuses can be found at DIY stores, and you should be able to just find the same one and replace it with that. But if your whole plug breaks, you'll need to remove the wires and replace them. Before I remove my wires, and I suggest that you do the same too, I'm just going to take a picture on my phone so that I've got a reference and I know how it should be connected. So I'm just going to take a quick picture so I know what it should look like, and I can make sure that the wires go back in the same place. I also suggest that once you've reconnected your plug back together, you get an adult to check it over with you just to make sure that it's all connected back together properly. So each wire you'll see is clamped onto the pin. This is done by this screw that pushes down into the hole and holds the wire in place. To remove the wire, you just need to slightly loosen the screw. It doesn't need to come out all of the way. Just enough that the wire can come free. You can do this with all of the wires. When you take out the wire, you'll see that it's made of copper. Copper wires are used a lot in electronics because copper is a really good conductor. It's got lots of free electrons that are able to move throughout the metal and transfer the charge. So it's able to transfer charge really quickly and efficiently. So you can undo the screws to remove each of the wires. And you should have 3 wires looking something like that. Some plugs, like mine, have the cable clamped. This means this is for strain relief. So if I was to say trip over the lead or pull the lead, the wires aren't able to move or be pulled out of the pins. This means that the plug makes the plug safe and stops it from being stops the risk of the wires being pulled out of the pins and breaking the plug. So that's really useful. If you needed to remove the strain relief, this can be done by the other screws on the back of your plug. You then put your wire into your new plug casing and connect the wires up. To connect the wires, you need to push them back into the holes that you've just taken them out of. You may find it easier to twist the ends of your wires before you push them in. This helps to neaten them up and makes them easier to go through the holes. At this point, it's a good time to refer back to your picture to make sure that you put the wires in the same places. This bit can be a bit fiddly, but the wires should bend into place. When you tighten your screw, make sure to tighten it as tight as you can, and then give the wire a little pull, just to make sure it's tight and secure back into the pin. Remember to do it for each of your 3 pins. You will notice that instead of being a single wire, your wire is stranded with lots of smaller wires. This helps the wire be more flexible and stops it from breaking as easily, as single core wire can do something called work harden. This is where, when it's bent in the same position for a few times, the wire starts to become stiff and then will break and snap. So a stranded wire has a lot less chance of doing this, as you've got lots of wires in there instead. I've now got all 3 wires back in my plug. I'm going to just check it against my picture and make sure that it's the same, which you can see it's the same as it was. And I suggest you do this and you get a parent or an adult carer to help you too. And just give each wire a pull just to make sure that they're all in place. You can then fit your fuse back in. It doesn't matter which orientation you put your fuse in, just make sure that the collars are definitely clipped into the clips. You don't want it off center like that, as you won't get as good as connection and you could risk your plug being damaged or the appliance it's connected to as well. So make sure that the metal collars are both connected to either of the clips. Then, once you've done that, everything's back together and you can put the case back on to the back of your plug. Then use the screw to fit the front and back together. Once you've done that, your plug's back together and your appliance should be ready to use again. I hope that you've enjoyed wiring a plug today, and now you know what to do if your plug breaks in future. Thank you for